Well, here is part 4, the final part of the Genesis Bible study that I've been doing, and this one is called Ancient Civilizations. I wanted to go through a few of the civilizations by popping up some pictures of just a few things of them and keep it kind of short and sweet as possible. In the last video, I did not explain Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, or Joseph because I'm going to do that in particular different series about the patriarchs of back then. But basically, one of the first groups I wanted to come across is the Hittites and the Hivites too. They're a smaller group that kind of caused some issues to the Hittites back in the day, but they weren't around for very long. But I'll start with the Hivites. Um, Basically, there's 1 to 2 occurrences in Genesis where I can bring them up, where Zibeon is identified as a Hivite in Genesis 36, verse 2, but is listed among the Horites in Genesis 36:20 and verse 29. There's not a whole lot about them, but the Hivite or the Hittites was the bigger one. Like in the previous video, I had showed a map of them. They had a relatively big kingdom up in the top of where Europe would be now, really. But they are basically a non-Semitic minorities within the population of Kanawha who frequently became involved with affairs of the Israelites. Um, the Hittites and the Hivite people were of the Indo-European origins, identified within the population of Kanawha as the sons of Kanawha in the Table of Nations in Genesis 10, where they pretty much give you the genealogy of everybody. Seemingly infiltrated from their cultural and political centers in the north and settled throughout Palestine. So they kind of started growing by that point. But one good biblical little point I like bringing up about them is, back another occurrence they'd had when Abraham had lived among the native population as a stranger and a sovereigner in Genesis 23:4. Um, he was forced into purchasing, some say forced, some say really wasn't forced. He felt forced, really, but to buy a cave there to bury his wife, Sarah, in Genesis 23. Um, Also, there's some things with Esau's marriage, um, to 2 Hittite women in particular in Genesis 26. He ends up marrying 2 of them, which I know back then was a custom that was, like I'd said before, the Bible said one is enough, but that was a custom that they had back then, that they were married to multiple people, which that was just the way the Bible rolled back then for us to get to the amount of point of people we have in today's population. But one of the other groups I wanted to talk about was really the development of not a group, it's still a nation that is among us. Because most of these other nations I'm mentioning will not be here, but this is the only one from ancient times that's still here really to this day, except, of course, where Israel originally was founded from. But it is Egypt, of course. And Egypt is the land northeast of Africa. Everybody pretty much knows where that is located. But one of the most interesting things is the Nile to the Mediterranean is some 750 miles long. That's one of the most interesting things I think about with Egypt. But also, a real interesting thing about Egypt around in these times is that when the Sixth Dynasty had came about, that was from 2700 to 2200 BC. That was the 6th dynasty of the Old Kingdom. That's when our famous pyramids we see nowadays came about and were part of the world that we see now. But also, that is not far from that time when Abraham had his journey through Egypt in Genesis 12, verses 10 through 20. The reasoning why um, this might have been around that time, is there is a painting in a tomb from a person named Beni Hassan showing the visitation of this type of person, Abraham, in Egypt about 1900 BC. So they have things that they believe are like hieroglyphs of him on the wall that makes it kind of interesting to see that that was around the time the Bible says that he had came into Egypt, and he didn't really want to, but their religion, for the most part, is a extremely complex and not totally understood religion to us throughout the world. Really, many of the great number of gods were like personifications, really, of enduring natural forces in Egypt, such as like the sun, the Nile, the air, things, etc. For that. And then some of them they worship took animal form, like we've seen. Man, there's a lot of bugs out here. Like we've seen in some of the things that Egypt has, like the Sphinx and all that. But almost done with this video. Um, and then one thing I wanted to mention was Kanawha, because really it's not just a religion and it wasn't just a person, and ended up becoming a region also. But a little briefness about Kanawha is that the biblical genealogy references of Kanawha in Genesis 9, verse 18, and chapter 10, verse 6, talk about he's one of the sons of Ham, one of the three sons of Noah. But to clarify the implications of this Hamitic descent of this son of Kanawha, he has numerous sons that they say end up becoming the Hivites, the Archites, the Arvadites, the Zimrites, the Amorites, the Jebusites, Sidon and Heth, which I showed a map. There's places called Sidon and Heth. So basically, his sons became these nations, is what they're telling us. But Kanawha, in particular, their religion was more of a mythology type of based religion that they believed in back in these times. I'm not going to get too in depth with that because, I mean, mythology, most of us already know what mythology is, and it's they believe in a bunch of like mythical type of creatures. But then we'll get to the one last part of this video. This is going to be one of the shortest videos we've had on this series, but this series of Genesis has been a really long, complex thing that needs to kind of be explained a little bit. But first I'm going to get, or the last part is Assyria, because you'd seen on a map also that shown that Assyria is a really big nation around this time. But Assyria was a nation in the northern Mesopotamia in the Old Testament times that became a large empire during the period of the Israelite kings. Assyrians' expansion into the region of Palestine was about 855 to 625 BC, had enormous impact on the Hebrew kingdoms of Israel and Judea. Little background history. I could give a whole series about the Assyrians. If anybody wants to hear that, you can just ask. I'll just in particular message it to you if you want that. But little background history. As Assyria lay north of the region of Babylonia along the banks of the Tigris River in Genesis chapter 2, verse 14. Its name, Assyria, in Hebrew means the Ashura, which you see that a lot in the Bible, that name. They basically became a nation from that name. But to move a little further, we'll end up tapping into their religion just a little bit before I get off here. Their religion was, my airplane sounds low. Their religion was, like most Near Eastern nations, it was polytheistic back then, essentially the same as the Babylonian region. They recognized thousands of gods, but only about 20 were like important in their actual practices. Younger gods were usually associated with newer cities or none at all. And you get deeper and you end up finding out that they actually had came amongst the Canaanites and all that. But that's about it I had for the ancient civilizations from back then. Some of the other ones, like the Amorites and the ones that I mentioned, that came from some of those other ones. There's not really a lot that you could really talk about them. There's not a lot of extra biblical knowledge or biblical things you can find about them. Um, I'm strictly trying to stick as close to the Bible about things as I'm trying to say. I know I could pull up. I'm a big history buff. I could pull up history about him, but I'm just trying to stick mainly theological to what's with the Bible and kind of sticking with it, with that kind of doctrine. So thank you all for listening to this 4-part series, and I'll be doing Exodus. But before I do the Exodus one, I will be making one about the patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and then in particular one about Joseph. The only reason why I want to do him by himself is there's actually about 6 or 7 occasions that his name comes up, just to clarify the Josephs that I was talking about. That way I don't have to mention them in any other Bible study. So God bless you all and have a good day.